So it's Sunday the 14th of November 2021, and we're protesting against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse and the cover-up and denial of Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse by not only Montreal Unitarians but by top-level leadership of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Because it is Remembrance Sunday in Great Britain, and possibly also here, I'm going to keep with a Remembrance Day theme to this protest. As I said seconds ago in another clip, essentially what it comes down to is, on Remembrance Day, we remember the Canadian soldiers who fought and died in a variety of wars, including World War II, ostensibly to preserve and protect democratic rights and freedoms, and I say ostensibly because I think it's debatable in terms of some of the wars we've been involved in, but certainly in World War II, I think it's fair to say that Canadian soldiers, were in fact fighting tooth and nail to preserve, the democratic rights and freedoms of, Canada and the Commonwealth and so on. Democratic rights that go back centuries. So that's that. Unfortunately, the Montreal Unitarians, certainly Montreal Unitarians, have abusively misused the SPVM police force and Canada's criminal justice system to shut down this protest. One of them even kept me out of city council meetings for a couple of years, which is very anti-democratic as far as I'm concerned. I was a regular person going to city council meetings asking questions, including questions about SPVM police repression, and not just police repression of my protest, but various other Montreal protests that were essentially repressed by the SPVM police force over the years. So I was a regular asking questions, about SPVM police repression. And Sue Montgomery, got herself elected as the mayor of Côte-des-Neiges, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, thanks to Valerie Plante, Projet Montreal leader, recruiting Sue Montgomery as a star candidate for Projet Montreal in 2017. I'm not sure if Sue Montgomery would have been elected if she had run as an independent or something. I think people voted for her because they were voting for Projet Montreal more than voting for her as an individual. But anyway, Sue Montgomery got elected as the mayor of Côte-des-Neiges, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, and was even appointed as Valerie Plante's first deputy mayor less than a month after getting elected. So she wasn't just the mayor of Montreal's largest borough, she was also Valerie Plante's first deputy mayor. And I knew that if Sue Montgomery got elected as mayor, that she would abuse her power and try to get this protest shut down. I thought she'd work behind the scenes. I expected her to lobby the SPVM with emails and phone calls and try to persuade them to have me arrested or ticketed into oblivion. What I did not expect was for her to bring criminal charges against me myself, but in hindsight I should have thought of it, because essentially she was desperate to keep me out of city council meetings because I was asking some tough questions about her involvement in Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse, cover-up and denial, including, of course, the previous abusive misuses of the SPVM by members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, if not the Unitarian Church of Montreal as an institution. And, she just didn't want this to be happening, and so she had me charged with criminal harassment. I was actually arrested while I was at the December 2017 City Council meeting. I went to the 2017 City Council meeting to ask a question about her behavior. And I was arrested before I could ask that question. And the Crown charged me on January 3rd, and so on and so forth. And it's only just recently that I was finally acquitted of, all of the criminal charges arising out of that arrest and a subsequent arrest for breach of conditions and additional trumped up criminal harassment charges. Like, they were literally trying to pretend that asking tough questions at city council meetings constituted criminal harassment, if you can believe that. Not to mention breach of conditions. So again, very, very anti-democratic, when you're using criminal law to keep a activist, protester, whistleblower, whatever term you want to use, critic, outside of city council meetings so they can't ask difficult questions. Anyhow, so that's it. Canadian soldiers, as I said, they fought at least in World War II against Nazis and Italian fascists and Japanese, who were essentially, Japan was a totalitarian imperialist government, with an emperor and pseudo-democracy. So we were definitely fighting against totalitarian regimes in World War II that were very much opposed to freedom of speech and genuine democracy and so on and so forth. And yet here in the 21st century, well into the 21st century, the SPVM are still repressing free speech, democratic rights. As I said, this protest has been repressed for approximately 3 years as a result of, trumped up criminal complaints being brought against me. And I've been ticketed on several occasions. Somebody's shaking her head in denial. I just saw the shake of the head. So, the picket signs say Unitarian Universalists misuse blasphemy law to cover up in the night pedophilia and rape. And this, long-time member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal is in denial. She doesn't want to believe that, this is actually 100% true. And maybe you should do something about it. No. She just pretends that I don't know what I'm talking about. When in fact it was the Unitarian Universalist Association that didn't know what it was talking about when it falsely accused me of blasphemous libel. That was actually quite amusing, to be honest. So I was never actually charged because it was total bullshit. But here's what happened, because it is, in some ways, quite an entertaining as well as educational story. In June of 2012, Friday, June 1st to be precise, I was looking at my email inbox when I noticed there was an email from Stikeman Elliott Barristers and Solicitors lawyer, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe. Well, that's interesting. And I had noticed visits to the Emerson Avenger blog in previous weeks from Stikeman Elliott. So when I saw that this big Canadian law firm, Stikeman Elliott, was looking at the Emerson Avenger blog post, I even thought, I wonder if the Unitarian Church, is trying to bring legal action against me for my blog posts, like I considered that as a possibility. So when I saw the email from Stikeman Elliott, I knew right away that, this could be interesting. So the email didn't say very much. It said, please refer to the attached PDF file or something like that. Just like a terse little one-sentence line. And then there was indeed a attached PDF file of a 2-page cease and desist demand letter. And in that cease and desist demand letter, amongst other ludicrous accusations, was this accusation accusing me of violating Canada's blasphemy law. It said, and this is pretty well an exact word-for-word quote, "Your unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape are defamatory." And then it went on to say that they're so defamatory that they constitute the criminal act of blasphemous libel. Now, I didn't even know what blasphemous libel was. I'd never heard that term before. When I read this letter, but I knew what blasphemous meant. I knew what libel meant, and I assumed that blasphemous libel was essentially libel of a blasphemous nature. So I looked it up. I did a little Google search on blasphemous libel to see what exactly blasphemous libel was, and essentially what it comes down to is it's, fancy legal jargon for blasphemy, blaspheming against religion. And it is indeed, or was at the time, there was an anti-blasphemy law prohibiting blasphemous libel in the Canadian Criminal Code. So I knew right off the bat that my blog posts about Unitarian Universalist pedophiles and rapists, indeed a Unitarian Universalist pedophile rapist by the name of Richard Buell, were by no means unfounded. To start with, they were not unfounded. They were very well founded on newspaper reports about how Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's First Parish Norwell parishioner, Richard Buell, had in fact been charged, tried, and convicted of the rape of preteen girls who were no older than 12 years old at the times that these rapes took place, and by some estimates might have been as young as 6, certainly somewhere between 9 and 12, according to the estimates of the ages of these, preteen girls who were raped by Richard Buell. Raping preteen girls, that makes you a pedophile rapist, as far as I'm concerned. That's an accurate description. I had in fact blogged about him, but my blog posts were based on newspaper reports about how he had been charged, tried, and convicted and sent to, jail. So nothing unfounded, not particularly vicious, certainly nowhere near as vicious as his behavior. And as far as I'm concerned, not blasphemous by any means. So there was also the case of Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell that I'd blogged about. I actually hadn't blogged about very many cases because I deliberately blogged about cases where the rapists in question had been charged, tried, and convicted and sentenced to jail terms. I was aware of other cases, but some of these cases, had never been proven in court in this kind of thing. Or even if they had been proven in court, that the name of the minister wasn't that clear, or the reports didn't really make clear exactly who it was. What were on my blog posts absolutely were not corresponding with that description. So I wrote to Maitre Colombe, and I asked him to identify the blog posts that he was accusing me of, blasphemous libel and so on, because he hadn't done so in the cease and desist demand letter. There was no clear identification of which blog post he was talking about, and he specifically referred to ministers of the association, whereas Richard Buell was a parishioner. He was not a minister, to the best of my knowledge. So I wanted Maitre Colombe to state exactly which blog posts he was claiming were unfounded and vicious, because then I was going to come around and say, well, actually, no, they're not unfounded, as you can see here. Here are the newspaper reports and so on. Bonjour. Hello.
That's always.
Yeah, it's always, yeah. But they don't always accuse you of blasphemy to hide it. So this guy's looking at the pedophilia and rape pick his eye and saying that's always in terms of churches, and he's right. And this is the crazy thing. We're gonna go off on a little soliloquy here because he raised an important issue. No matter what size of religious community you are, even if it's only a few thousand members, which is not the case with the Unitarian Universalist Association. It's not a big religion either. In fact, President Peter Morales of the UUA, the one responsible for having me accused of blasphemous libel, described, or at least insinuated, that Unitarian Universalism is a tiny declining fringe religion in his stump speech seeking or announcing his run for president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. He said, we are not called to be a tiny declining fringe religion. So he was essentially saying that, you know, if we're not already a tiny declining fringe religion, we're well on our way to being one. And he was right. There's only about, at the time, I think it was 160,000 to maybe 180,000 adult members, which is not really a whole lot for a, you know, American church. You know, you got like, what, 300,000 plus, 300 million plus Americans, and only, you know, less than 300,000 Unitarian Universalists, a tiny fraction of the American religious landscape. But anyway, we're getting a little off track. So you know, that's what it comes down to. Is it doesn't matter what size of religious community are. You know, once you've got, you know, some thousands of members, there's almost inevitably going to be some pedophiles, some rapists in your midst. So having a few pedophiles or rapists or in your midst, or even quite a lot if you're a large religious community like the Catholic Church, you know, that's one thing. The issue is the cover-up and denial and the, you know, protecting of the pedophiles and rapists that the religions engage in. And that's my main issue in terms of the Unitarian Universalist Church. You know, I understand that there will be a certain number of pedophiles and rapists within the Unitarian Universalist religious community, and as despicable as that is, it's almost unavoidable. So the real issue in terms of the Unitarian Universalist Church is, well, what do they do when it comes to their attention? You know, there's a pedophile and or rapist in their midst, and there's clear evidence that they have certainly tried to cover it up and deny it, even after ministers have been convicted, to say nothing of Sunday school teachers and you know, lay leaders like